Alright, it's my 2006 Chrysler 300. Trying to find out why I constantly have fog in windows. And you can see inside there, I'm trying to also. There's the screen, so someplace in there there's supposed to be, my understanding anyhow, a filter of some sort, but I don't know if mine's ever had one. Again, this is just to look and see what's in there, then hopefully find the door. But may eventually fix that. So this is on the passenger side, right inside the windshield there. It's where it's bringing in the fresh air. Typically what happens is if that, in the wintertime, if you're not pulling any kind of fresh air into the vehicle, what it does is when it gets 32 degrees or colder, all of a sudden your windows start just getting fog like mad. In some cases I've been in a storm where on the inside of the car started icing over the entire inside of the windows. No matter what I did, even to running the defrosters on full blast, I had a hard time keeping up. So depending on how cold and stuff it gets, so all that humidity inside is what causes that. If you're not bringing in fresh air, it'll continue to do it. So I'm believing, from what little information I found on YouTube and online, is they're going to have to take the glove box out next in order to get to the back side of the dash there where all the components are. Again, for the recirculating switch, so the door that's inside there rocks open or closed, of course, the way you got your heater set up, in order to let the outside air in the winter, which it should automatically do. But like I say, it's not functioning. So here we get started. Here's what we have so far. I got the motor kind of loose on the inside of the heater box in here. The actuator, and this came off the end of the actuator. Actually, see that there's a gear on the end of it, and of course it spins it, and that's what opens and closes the recirculate air. The best I can tell, I'll get in there, take another look. As you can see, it's kind of roughed up on the end. So unlike other videos online where they talk about the clicking, where the gears or something go bad inside the actuator, it looks like the actual door itself on mine, that this came off of it. So my plan is I plan on getting it on the drill press, drilling a small hole through the backside here, and then finding a flat piece of steel or something and pushing it in through this end. And I don't think I can get in there to run a drill in, but my thought process is put the flat piece in through that end all the way through this, and then see if I can somehow hold that up in place well enough to either get a screw through it and or put some sort of a shaft, nothing round necessarily unless it's the screw. So, because otherwise, it could potentially spin. Then use something like JB Weld or something on the other side of it to hold it in place. But I don't think the JB Weld will stay in place for a long period of time in order to operate that door. So that's the plan today. Go ahead and get that in and try her like that. Like I say, worst case is run a rod through it, something flat again, potentially, and even just heat the end of it so I can press it into the door itself on the other side. So run the rod in here through the end of this, and then heat it up with something in order to essentially melt the plastic in the door, and then push it in a bit, and then pull it back out, and then get the JB Weld on here, and then reapply that back in place and let her set for a day and see if I can get it to reconnect to the door. The other thing on the actuator motor too is make sure it's in the correct position. I've got mine torn apart now, and I could actually get the actuator to function, but obviously it'll only move partial one direction or the other. So make sure, in my case, it's not recirculating, it is in recirculation right now, so I need to make sure that the setting on the panel is at recirculate, so the motor's in the correct position, because you don't want to put this back together, have it in the wrong position, and have it torque in the direction it's not supposed to go, and potentially either break this back off again or trash out the motor. All right, right here on the glove box, I went ahead and punched that out. As you can see, the little tab there, right there. It's just, yeah, you just push it in. This is where it kind of connects on the inside, so you can get a screwdriver underneath that little tab I just showed you and push it out, so it'll pop out here. I've already taken the little retractor cable off, and then as you can see here are the hinge points. Here are the hinge points for the glove box, so that you can just kind of pivot it forward and then pop it on out. I found it a little bit easier to get in here, at least, to get to this, again, the motor in here that is now on the floor. Kind of a pain in the neck to get out. It's not a Torx bit on the back of it. They're actually 5/16 inch screw heads. The back one's a ultimate pain in the butt, because if you look at it back in here at the mounting point right here, it actually the screw goes back towards the firewall, so it's incredibly difficult to get anything on it. I actually had to get the first screw out up here, and then of course that's just a centering pin, but the back one back there, I had just literally pivoted the whole thing around, took the glove box out so I could actually get to that point right there, and actually got a wrench on it to get it out. I don't know what I'm going to do to put it back in, because obviously what I'm doing here, it needs to go on straight and I won't be able to pivot it, so I may use a Phillips or something in there, screw or something, to go ahead and fasten that in. It might be a little bit easier with a stubby screwdriver to get that in than trying to get a 5/16 wrench on it, which was an ultimate pain in the ass. And then right back in here, again, you can see that hole. Well, that's for the door, and that's where I'm going to mount that back in there. I went ahead and drilled that out, and I got a nice long screw on it. What I plan on doing to an extent here again is if I can get it started in that door will be great. So I'm going to go ahead and try to heat that end, so it'll hopefully, I don't care if it softens this piece so much, because if it just slides in and on that, I really don't care. But I want it to go all the way into the, from here into the actual door itself, to be able to sink it all the way in as far as I can into that shaft. So if I heat it, if I can get it started, I should be able to finish it, putting it in the rest of the way, or at that point use a shorter screw. And then of course I'll back it back out, I'll put a bunch of JB weld on there, and I'll put it back in and then fasten her in, let her set for a day. Then hopefully that will allow me to get her put it back together. But again, I just used this longer screw for the sole purpose of being able to heat it and hopefully melting it on the door side in order to at least get the screw started, because there is absolutely no room to work up in there. And of course, what I read online, you can replace this box and this whole thing, but from my understanding, you almost have to replace the whole freaking thing, and it's like $200. And then of course taking the dash out to get the thing out. So not willing to do that. I think this should probably work. If not, worst case scenario, I'll open or stick something in there, fasten it somehow to the thing. Go old fashioned, old school, manual, put a lever up underneath here or something, so if I need fresh air I can just do it from underneath. Old school, my son refers to it as ghetto gear. But you know, as long as the thing doesn't frost up and the car be in dangerous driving, that's what counts. All right, here we are now. That wasn't lining up as I had planned it to, so hopefully this will save you guys some steps. What I did is I dropped the blower motor off the unit. 4 screws, relatively easy to get to, which is surprising. And as you can see through this door here, through these fins, you can see my fingers up in there. Well, that's the fresh air door here. You can see it swing over. Well, that's where it pivots on this corner over here, where I showed you where the motor was going to go in, and this essentially cuts off the cabin air and brings in the fresh air. And I'm just going to try to figure out how in the world I can get over there to either get this thing out. I've taken some of the screws out of here. I'd love to be able to get them all out, but this is the part I can't find, and it almost looks like it's part of the main box back here. So I'm not sure if I can get this to drop out. I'm not sure how flexible this is to get this silly thing out of here. But if nothing else, like I say, I can just bust this stupid thing out of here and deal with not having it. But anyhow, so yeah, up inside here, so that's the door. It's kind of a curved piece. I think there's fresh air to you know, cabin air. So anyhow, I'm sure that's what's causing my problem with my fogging, because this thing was constantly on indoor air, which is causing it to ice up constantly. So this is where I am. I'll show you as I move along. Okay, well, we got her in there. What I did was use some JB Weld. As you can see, it's on there. So what I highly recommend, so it doesn't seize up on you, it's a little kitty wampus on there though too, is to turn it every few minutes while it's drying to make sure it doesn't seize up to your box. So anyhow, it's a little kitty wampus in there, but I'm hoping that motor will adjust to that. I did put a couple washers. I put the screw through. I put some washers on the back side to extend it out from the box just a little bit, because I think it was worn down too much from the constant, you know, over the time when it was bad, rubbing against the inside of the actual door inside of here. So it was shorter. So when I did put the screw into it, it seemed like it was binding because it was squishing it in between the cabinet and this. So it was squishing it down. So what I did is I put a couple washers in there to extend it back out again. And if need be, you know, when I put the actuator back on, I may need to put a washer or two underneath that just to have it extend out a little bit farther because of the washer adjustment. Maybe, maybe not, but again, just trying to keep it from binding. So at this point, like I say, it should pretty much function. But again, if you use some of that JB Weld or some sort of adhesive on there to make sure that that thing never comes loose. I thought maybe the screw would just work, but the problem was with the constant opening and closing. Obviously the screw is doing the same thing, and being in plastic, it was actually getting loose as I was putting it in. The other thing you're going to need to do to get that hole through that door here, which I had a really difficult time. I actually ended up just starting a screw in from this side, which is a real pain in the neck. But I quite honestly, if you have a small angle drill or something that you can get in here to get up and then drill it through, or bring it through from this side, preferably, because you can actually, you know, center it a little bit better and do an angle drill and drill the hole through. And I would probably run a bolt all the way through and then put some Loctite on and bolt it from the other side. And then of course you can obviously put the washers and adjustments so the door actually operates freely. But anyhow, that should fix her up. Like I say, I'm just got a little bit more wiggling, and we'll see how she works. All right, here we are. Got her kind of back together. I will tell you that with this motor, as you can see, it's opening and closing now. I don't know how long she'll last, for the simple reason whether or not that nub will break off of there again. I did put a screw through it into the actual door itself, and I used the JB Weld, the two-part epoxy that is the black and the white that turns a gray when it's mixed. I tried to use the auto mixing thing, which was clear, just wasn't as strong as the regular old JB Weld in holding that particular piece in there. And part of the issue with this motor is, and I don't know if it's with all of them, there's a lot of torque in here the way they have this set up with gearing. And there's it's kind of funny, it's not preset to a certain amount of rotation. What happens is, and probably why it broke off initially, is for a simple reason, these shut off under torque. So in other words, once it hits a stopping point, the motor continues to try to force it closed, and then it'll shut off because it's under stress. So in other words, at a point when it can't move any farther, then it'll shut off. But when I ran the motor disconnected from this, the thing would make almost a full revolution before it would stop. And again, this is only a quarter turn. You're just changing the vent from, you know, drawing inside to outside air. So the dilemma is this sucker just has an extreme amount of torque and ended up busting that off of there. I don't know if there's any kind of setting. I've looked online to see if there's some sort of a reset for the HVAC system. I see there are for some models of Chrysler. I couldn't find anything for this. I don't know if this is a defect of just this particular motor. I took it apart, pretty simple in there, just a little electric motor. So it's getting a signal through here that's telling it to rotate for a certain amount of time. Other than that, you'd hook that motor up direct. I believe it would just run and run and run and run. So the signal it's getting is more than adequate time to turn this almost a full revolution if that were to do that. But again, under stress, in other words, it comes to its contact point, then the motor loads up and then it shuts off. But that's why that broke off initially in the first part. So there you go. Again, all functioning. Hopefully it'll keep doing it, because it's really kind of a pain in the butt when it doesn't, especially in the winter months. So there she goes again. Again, the best way to do that, yank this thing out of the bottom, 4 screws. Here, not too much trouble actually. It was relatively easy reaching out. The hard part, again, like I say, was drilling that, or getting that screw to set into that pin right there. But anyhow, it works, yay! Thanks for watching. Hopefully this helps you. Please like it if you found it useful. Thanks.